Welcome to the Zachrilege cast. We are going full Game of Thrones. Jen Aldrich is on. Please show the crowd on YouTube, and you podcast listeners are missing out. You have a special gear for tonight's show.
Is it too soon?
Too soon? Yeah, I know. What perfect timing.
Too soon, everybody?
Exactly.
I don't give a shit. I'd have done that shit too. Fuck everybody. Fuck y'all. Nope. Fuck that bitch.
You came up and said, hey, you want to, since I think like 6 weeks ago, I was like, hey, you want to talk about Game of Thrones? You're like, yeah, I have this job that makes me work like 70 hours a week. And
yeah, I was.
But don't you want to talk about what's important in life? Do you have priorities?
Don't want to pay my bills, or I want to talk about the Game of Thrones. And ladies and gentlemen, here I am. So.
Yeah, and I last time I was in Nashville, I made a beer trade with a guy, and it was a beer called Black Bell, which is out of I think it's Blackstone in Nashville. And he gave me beers from 2015 to last year. Only problem is adjunct beers that have like other flavors. Like this has cocoa nibs in it. I think the chocolate part kind of goes away. So
see, I wanted never to have beers and IPAs. Like I've never.
I wanted to have the older beer in honor of a show that started in 2011. So here we are, and you have I
have your finest Clarksville liquor store $15 bottle of Sauvignon Blanc because I drink and I know things. And this is the finest blend of the Cumberland River Arbor wine. No, this is California. This is your finest blend of we're going to burn the state down Arbor wine.
This is your finest prison toilet wine. Yes. Clarksville. Welcome to Nashville, everybody.
This is actually, we have a winery here, Beach Haven. That's pretty nice. They do like jazz on the lawn every other Saturday, and they have like these local bands that come out, and you get really super shit faced off their wine. And like nobody actually listens to the music. You just kind of go and sit and get shit faced all night. Nobody actually listens to what the fuck's being played.
It's perfect, yeah.
But it's really nice and it's really wonderful. They do wine tours and stuff. Their wine's not bad. They more center on sweet wines, which is not my thing. But please forgive the sounds of the Red Keep crumbling on your head behind me. I have 3 kittens. So yes, the Red Keep, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, when we talk since the finale of the show, probably for podcast listeners, is happening like today, and then for people watching this live or this weekend is happening now. So this would be a good time to talk. But I wanted to, usually I do, hey, talk about your podcast, talk about your background.
I'll do that real quick. I do a podcast that's not another atheist podcast. It's about atheism. Cool. I started reading the Game of Thrones books about 15 years ago.
Yeah, the first one came out like
20. It's like 20, 22 years.
A long time ago.
And I was kind of young at that point, but 15 was like right at the perfect spot for it where I kind of got it. And I loved it. And I kind of became this like scholar on it. Like I have like the history books. I have delved into all the lore, reading material, show material wise. And there's pretty much not a question you can't ask me or a theory I have not crossed or considered. So
you'll be the version of. I was listening to the binge mode show.
I like the Three-Eyed Raven,
which is on The Ringer, and there's one guy on that show, and like literally, he knows like every detail of like the past 500 years. Like George R. R. Martin clearly did a good job sketching out not only the story that we were reading, but the history behind it and kind of what led up to these things. And it is an amazing story. I mean, for me, like I read the first book on the beach a few years ago, and it's amazing how the first season and the first book really
were identical,
parallel each other. And then, of course, it kind of went
totally. Also, if you hear baby dragon screeching upstairs, that is my son watching YouTube because it's Friday, and I let him sit up and watch TV for a little bit when he goes to bed. But yeah, it's the first season is pretty much the first book, and then from there it splits completely. Yeah, I'm like the Three-Eyed Raven. I'm pretty much the Three-Eyed Raven.
Well, I told you when we met up at Nashville, the NanoCon, at the NanoCon, because it has a "the" before it, because that's what every podcast does, and then they're all in the same place.
Yeah.
That I was waiting for the library to get me the last book, and it did, and I read it, but I was a little sad reading it because at the end of the 5th book, there's a lot of characters that are like left in the lurch. Like Stannis is alive in the books.
Brienne is
Cersei
left in the lurch.
is about to go to trial. Jon just gets killed.
Jon gets fucking murked.
Did I mention to everybody this is a spoiler episode? Anyway, you should know these
Oh,
things.
you guys are gonna get spoiler. Like,
Yeah, I know.
Tell people do not watch this if you're not caught up, because like you're gonna get dropped. Brienne is also, we don't know what's gonna happen to her at the end of the books, because Lady Stoneheart is getting ready to hang her at the end of the last book. So we don't know what's going on with her either.
Well, that's a good thing to bring up, like the differences between the books and the show. And the first one that I always bring up is that if you think there are a lot of characters in the show, there are like 3 times as many characters. Like, I was just thinking, like, Arya goes to Bravos. In the show, it's just Arya, the faceless guy, and the waif, and that's it. And in the book, they're like all the people who actually like cook the food and clean the place.
Yeah,
you know?
she interacts with everybody in the House of Black and White. She like goes through the entire House of Black and White and like interacts with everybody, kitchen staff, cleaners. Like, she gets to know every nook and cranny of the House of Black and White. So the whole, oh my God, what the fuck is going on with the waif and, you know, her training in the show, I think is going to be way more fleshed out in the books, because she's going through this kind of every nook and cranny and every task and every job that can be done in the House of Black and White. She's kind of learning everything about it. So I think that's going to be way more fleshed out than, oh, you know, the Thin Man and the play and that, which the whole play thing was like the worst thing for me. I was just like, I'm actively bored, and I love Arya. I was actively bored watching that. And I was like,
you know, like recaps within a recap.
This fucking chase through the streets like it's fucking Rush Hour. Like, where the fuck? Like, I'm just waiting for Jackie Chan to come popping out of like a fucking back alley somewhere when her and the waif are going at it. And I'm like, is Chris Tucker around? Like, what? I don't even know what's going on right now.
Well, maybe, you know, I'm like, I have all these. There are too many questions. They're going to be, usually in an episode, I have a bunch of extra questions, and this one I'm going to have about 100.
Yeah,
but in terms of like the books versus
Arya's arc,
the book versus the show, do you have like an example of like a change that? I mean, this is an easy one, of course, but like, say, a change between the books and the show that you were like, ooh, I wish they had done it differently, or I wish they could have fleshed it out more. I guess saying it fleshing out more is not worth it, because clearly the showrunners wanted to get the fuck out.
I wish they had fleshed out certain characters more from the books, like they have in the show, like Bronn, Tormund. They're not very fleshed out in the books, but they really have kind of come into their own on the show. Beric, the biggest one for me is Beric Dondarrion. He was the biggest one for me. I have always loved Beric Dondarrion. I always thought he was this totally badass fucking knight. I thought it was great that he was pretty much the first one that said fuck the king and like ran off with the Brotherhood without banners, and he was like, peace, and I'm done, and I keep getting resurrected. And then in order to bring back Catelyn, they killed him off. But we now know in the show he was resurrected to kind of protect Arya. And I really dug how they fleshed him out more in the show and kept him around more in the show than I felt he was kind of unjustly done in the books.
Yeah, I think the only character that I remember hearing about in the books that wasn't in the show was the Lady Stoneheart. So in short, Lady Stoneheart is...
And I've never been a fan of Cat, so I'm like, wow, we totally...
Catelyn Stark, who gets killed in the Red Wedding, but then
right, okay,
her body gets thrown in the water. You said you probably know this better than I do, so
yeah, okay,
show me how you already showed me the drinking, so now know things.
Yeah, I know, right? Now I know things. Catelyn Stark died at the Red Wedding. We all knew that. They cut her throat. We all knew that. They threw her in the river, which is highly disrespectful to Tullys. You're supposed to light them on fire as they go down to the river, you know, river run, whatever. And Beric Dondarrion and Thoros Lemire pulled her out. And Beric was so heartbroken and so stricken that he gave her the kiss of life to bring her back to life, which killed him. And now her throat had been cut so deep that she could barely speak. But she is now running the Brotherhood without banners. And she's pretty much going through the Riverlands slaughtering anyone she thought had any hand in betraying her family. Anybody. And Brienne I think on the search for somebody, I can't remember who now because it's so different, comes across them in the Riverlands, and Catelyn sees her, you know, with Jaime Lannister's sword and the Lannister outfitting, and she was like, "You fucking betrayed us." And where we left off in the books was she was getting ready to hang Brienne, and it just said that Brienne exclaimed something and stopped, and I'm like, what did she say? I need to know what happened. Like, this is the massive cliffhangers we've been left on with the books.
And wasn't Jaime coming to
No, Jaime
get her or meet her?
It could be Jaime, because in the books, Jaime's redemption arc is totally different in the books. Jaime like gets real fed up with Cersei's shit really early. She winds up getting like super fucking fat, and she's going crazy because she drinks all this wine, and she's in denial that she's getting fat. She's saying that her maidens are shrinking her clothes in the wash, like they're shrinking her dresses, and he's just like whole ass had enough of motherfucking Cersei.
And Cersei's like having sex with way more people in the
Yeah,
books.
Cersei's like fucking Moon Boy for all you know and shit. You know what I mean? Cersei's like fucking everyone, and she's getting fat, and she's fucking like she's slowly turning mad. And Jaime decides to take off into the Riverlands to kind of get this whole Frey Tully situation under control. And a lot of his chapters center around just this kind of journey he's having, and now he's coming to terms with the fact that Cersei's fucked up, and there's more to his life than this, and he feels terrible about how he acted. And yeah, it's him kind of having this turn arc, and his turning arc is amazing in the books. It wasn't just he showed up to fucking Winterfell and decided to be a better person. This is like a whole physical journey that he's on. So you get way more attached and way more in depth to Jaime's kind of discovery and turning and figuring himself out. You get like really attached to it in the book. I love Jaime in the book.
Well, I think one thing the show has done is that it does make you become like fan of a character. Like you think of all the major characters that are still alive heading into the last episode, and you're like, how many of them haven't like murdered somebody? And it's a pretty
right. I mean, even
it's a pretty small number. So everybody has done a bad thing.
Right, and that's the basis of that. And even George R. R. Martin has said the basis is that nobody is wholly good or wholly evil. Like nobody. And even these villains in the book, like Ramsay. You know, Ramsay, it's very easy to paint him as this massive, just evil demon psychopath. But when you get into his backstory, you know, his mother was raped by Roose Bolton. Roose Bolton never lets him forget that you are the product of rape. He never lets him forget this.
I think that came up kind of really late. Like obviously in the show you can't do the repeating, and in the books I think you have that opportunity to kind of repeat things over 1,000 pages. You need to, because it's
Roose Bolton kind of always is dropping these hints that you're my bastard, you're my bastard, you're my bastard. And what they didn't get into in the show was that there was a baby brother of Roose Bolton's of Ramsay Bolton's that he's killed before too, because he's always had this you're a bastard child of rape kind of driven into his head. And Reek originally was not Theon. Reek was this other kind of little playmate that he had, that because he was a bastard, Roose didn't really pay attention to him. So they let him run off with this little psychopathic child who kind of molded Ramsay into what he is. So it was kind of this perfect storm of knowing you're unloved and knowing that he's kind of the mirror to Jon Snow. To where, you know, they were both kind of cast out, but in different ways and left to different devices, to where Roose left him off with dishonorable people. And this is what he turned into, to where we had honorable Ned kind of raising Jon. So it's kind of this weird mirror between him and Jon Snow. And a little fun fact, the role of Jon Snow actually came down to Ewan Ryan, who played Ramsay Bolton, and Kit Harington, who plays Jon Snow. These were the last two characters it came down to. These are the last two people it came down to. So we very well could have actually seen Ramsay Bolton be playing Jon Snow. But it's this very.
It would have been kind of shorter too.
Yeah, right.
Like, how many short jokes regarding Kit Harington could they make, like, in one season? And this year, they've just, like, two per episode.
Just, like, OD'd on them.
I think last episode was the first one where they didn't make a short joke about it.
No, and it's like, I thought he was gonna snap one day because they're like, keep telling this motherfucker how pretty he is. He's not telling how fucking small he is. Like, he's gonna be the one that snaps and fucking burns the city down. Like, yeah, I'm big fucking tough, man. Fuck you. But yeah, it's
random thing about Ramsay's, like, in the books, he wears pink, and I'm like, why didn't they do that in the show? Like, the show is really dark.
Like, they kind of blended Ramsay and Euron.
That's right. Euron was way.
Okay, I know. I lied.
In the books.
Fucking Euron is evil. Like, fucking Euron is just.
In the books, like, Euron is like, he's got this great fleet. He's got a horn that can control
the dragon rider. But like, Euron is like so charming in the books, and he's like that guy.
Demolish things, yeah.
Right, but he's like he's kind of, he looks like a Stark, and he's skinny, and he's chiseled, and he's got the black hair, and he's got the one blue eye and the one fucking black eye. And Euron in the books is the guy that you're probably gonna get strangled for sleeping with, but he's so good looking and so charming that you think about taking your chances. He's that guy. You're like, you know what? He's probably gonna slit my fucking throat after he orgasms, but this may be worth it. You're like, you know what?
It's funny
that be worth it.
They talk a lot about the show, how they kind of de-emphasize the magical elements, and they definitely de-emphasize like the dire wolves and how important they were. But
because I don't.
Tyrion had two different colored eyes, and Euron had two different colored eyes, and they're like, we're not doing that.
Well, they had a hard time with how they really.
It probably would have been tough CGI.
Right on camera, but I have a personal theory that, and I don't think the show had enough time to flesh it out, that magic kind of spiked to kind of handle the White Walker problem. And now that there is no problem, magic is going to disappear from the world because it's no longer needed. So that's why the dragons are dying. That's why the direwolves are being sent off. That's why everyone that is heavily believed in and heavily connected to the Lord of Light is now dead. Everyone that's heavily connected to religion is now dead.
That's true. They didn't blow up the Septons, although I thought the Septs were the ones who rang the bells, which were very prominent in the last episode. But I guess they probably
was ringing the bell. Who rang the bell?
It was Qyburn's. What was it? His.
But no, Varys took his little birds back. So
that's true.
Like, who rang the bell?
Here's an intriguing topic for a couple atheists to talk about. In this world, there are a lot of gods, and they actually do things. So in this world, would you be like a Lord of Light disciple? Would you be old gods? Where are you going?
Davos, like one god, tree gods, drowned gods, they're all the fucking same to me. Okay, like if I saw some cool shit, cool. If I saw some super hot 400-year-old chick birth a shadow baby, I'd be like, wow, that is some good dark shit. I don't know what you're drinking, but give me some of that LSD. I'd probably be like Davos, light god, death god, drowned god, they're all the same. If I had Joffrey putting a fucking crossbow to the back of my head and saying you have to pick one, it would be the old gods. It would definitely, because it's tangible to me. The old gods are tangible. They worship like the trees and the nature, and they listen to the wind, and it's tangible. It's real shit. I can look at a fucking weirwood tree and know that this is a physical thing that does something that Bran can touch and have visions, and things happen with these, and it's not this mystical. The old gods kind of don't overrule things. It's very much a just respect us and we respect you. And I dig that. If I had to go on badassery alone, fucking drown god. Shit, fucking drown god. You drown your fucking kings, and if they come back, they can rule. What? You kill them and they come back. What does that mean? Never die? I'm like, that's the most bad. Y'all don't give the Greyjoys enough motherfucking credit.
That was one example. And I think George R.R. Martin's making a comeback. Like, I think for a while it was like, oh, the dude can't produce the stuff. And then it's like, man, look what he did. Because the whole Godsmoot situation in the show, there's like 2 people involved. And in the book, there's like 10.
There's 10, right? Like,
it just keeps getting higher and higher.
Democracy. Like, this is a literal democracy. And it didn't matter that Balon Greyjoy had heirs. It's like, no, we vote. And not only do they vote, because they're like, no, fuck that, humans are fallible. they take a guy named Damp Hair. His name is fucking Damp Hair, who has seaweed in his fucking hair, takes the winner of the King's Moot down to the fucking sea, drowns them, and if they come back to life, they can rule. I'm like, why don't we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this with presidential candidates? Can we vote for somebody and then bring them down to the Potomac and then drown them for 3 seconds? And if they come back, they could be president. Can we do this? Like, is this allowed? Because I would totally be down for this.
Maybe just the white straight ones. I feel like
I would totally be chanting "What is dead may never die" if we can do this for our elections. But nobody, their fucking sigil is a goddamn kraken. This is the coolest shit I've seen in a long fucking time. It's a kraken. They drown their fucking winners, and what is dead may never die. Who is this badass? Nobody. The fucking Starks aren't even this.
And then they're kind of super minor house, but they have their moments. I think everybody has their moments, I guess. Okay, we'll do the one random question that kind of connects.
What's yours? What would be your choice of religion in Westeros?
That's a good question. Is it the what's it? The fire god? Which one is that? See, I don't even remember.
Or the one that brought Jon back.
Yeah, exactly. That keeps you young. Yeah. Although it seemed like there were maybe 1 or 2 males, but it was mostly females running that thing, which
Yeah,
they were using the dudes just for oh, we're gonna have sex with you, and then use leeches on your body. That was really crazy.
If you paid attention to the background, once you got out of Westeros, there were a lot more priests, but it's not very popular in Westeros. But I think it has something to do with the cause and effect of the White Walkers are death and women are life, their fertility. So I think that's why they kind of emphasized women a bit more. Because I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, is the battle of life and death. And I'd had this conversation with quite a few people. Martin has never made his atheistic and agnostic views quiet. He's always been pretty vocal about it. And in the end, it's a pretty atheistic view as to what's going on. People who aren't really tied to religion are the ones that are prevailing. And it's reason and emotion that is kind of running the show at the end of the day, and not the gods. It no longer became about prophecy when fucking Arya is the one that killed the Night King. What the prince that was promised was literally just that. It was a fucking prophecy. And it was never tangible.
Yeah, there were a lot of prophecies in the books.
Yeah,
the Valonqar one. They haven't necessarily happened. I don't know if they will happen.
The Valonqar in the show, they just said that Cersei would have the life choked out of her. So technically, that did happen.
By rocks.
Yeah, by rocks. But the whole prince that was promised thing never happened. It never happened. So this was kind of this smack in the face to religion, that people do all this crazy shit. Rhaegar left his wife. He started a war because he believed, in the 3 heads of the dragon prophecy. And even us, we all got wrapped up in it. And it never happened. And then anyone who did kind of follow this prince that was promised prophecy is dead. So it's kind of
was a true believer, and he died. His wife was a true believer, then she killed herself.
It's kind of the story of prophecy and religion and the shit that it drives people to do, and to where people who sorry, my cats are fighting. People who they're just sniffing at each other. People who at best were Jon Snow's yeah, the fire god brought me back, but I still don't know how much. He doesn't allow it to lead his life. Right down to Tyrion and Davos, who are self-proclaimed fucking atheists. These are the ones now running the show. Even Dany never wholeheartedly really believes in religion or prophecy. Because she finds ways to twist it, oh, but prince is unisex. It could be princess. Or it could be queen. Even she doesn't wholly believe it. So it's now these end players are literally... Even Arya doesn't wholly believe in the god of death. You know what I mean? She believes in making her own way. So these people that are left
do a lot of training and then getting stabbed in the gut,
right.
Much left for dead, and somehow coming out of it.
But it's the people that are left are not religious, and it's more of an atheistic view of this is what religion does to people, and this is the crazy shit that happens.
because it doesn't always work out. Like there are times where the gods appear to do things, but then it's like, oh, it's up in interpretation. Usually the interpretation is poor.
Right. And what do we hear about the Bible is like,
it goes poorly.
Yeah. What do you hear about the Bible? Oh, well, that's how you know it's up for interpretation. But the people who take things very literally, Jon, Davos, Tyrion, Dany, Arya, these are the players that are now left. Even Tormund, who is a believer in the old gods but doesn't really follow them, he's now left. So it's this very atheistic view of what all is not meant to be in religion. And that's kind of been this common theme in the books, is that when people get religion involved, shit gets fucked up. And we saw that with Cersei in the Faith of the Seven. And there was actually a previous Targaryen king who went full throttle fucking religious crazy. And when he died, they completely ousted the faith militant. Like the town was like, we're done. We don't ever want them back in power again. So there's always been this kind of theme of religious extremism and the ills of it in the series, which is something I've always highly respected. And it makes me laugh because I watch all these people kind of, roll into it, and their favorite characters are these atheistic characters. But then we'll demonize an atheist as soon as they see them. And I'm like, bitch, you literally said you would suck Davos's dick. And he was like, fucking drown gods, fire gods, fucking tree gods. The shit's all the fucking same to me. Like,
Davos is like, I'm still alive. And by the way, Davos
shocked the shit out of me. I love that Davos is still alive. I love
Davos is married, and like the wife is not involved. And I think in the show all of his sons are dead, but in the books, like he has 7 kids, and I think like 3 or 4 are alive. And he's like, I don't care. Yeah.
And like she's totally cool with, she's like, hey, you gotta go live your dream, babe, and I'm just gonna fucking chill here on Dragonstone and raise these kids. And she's like totally
different. It's like a Middle Ages thing. Like, oh, you go to war and then you never come back, and that's just what happens.
Right. So, but he does go back to Dragonstone here and there in the books, and he does see his wife and he sees his kids, and then he goes off and he kind of has his little adventures, and he comes home, and she's like fucking badass cool with it. She's like, yeah, babe, you're going on a business trip. Bye. See what I do? Davos has like the coolest fucking wife in Westeros, and he never cheats on her. He never fucking talks bad about her. This is like the most wonderful power marriage I think I've ever seen in the Middle Ages, is Davos and his wife.
And then she wasn't even like a character in the show, right?
No, they didn't even mention her in the show. But he talks about her in the books. He loves the shit out of her. He loves the fuck out of her. He goes back, and then he's like, I gotta go away on business. And she's like, yeah, babe, I got you.
Okay, but we haven't really gotten into the current controversy. I'm sure there'll be new controversy in 2 days. But episode 8.5 happened. We had our little 3-episode arc, as they were talking about.
Right.
Battle of Winterfell, which turned to be a little anticlimactic. And then the Battle of King's Landing, which they clearly were setting up to be like, we're like, oh, there's no way. Now, so the Dothraki gets like totally wiped out in Winterfell. Totally wiped out. Then all of a sudden, 2 episodes later, half of them come back to life.
I know we're live, but my kid's screaming upstairs. So I'm just going to shut my door. Hold on.
I didn't hear that yet. See, I was talking loud, which for once was a good thing. See, listeners?
Sorry, everyone. I kind of have my own little Dothraki screamer at my house, and he's currently screaming his battle cry to YouTube upstairs. So, yeah, it literally sounds like Winterfell being charged in my house.
Right? Both the Dothraki like come out of nowhere, and then
how stupid was that?
Like episode 4, there are like 200 Unsullied left, and then all of a sudden they have like 10,000. Like they had this weird like the showrunners had this need to like say, oh, when this battle happens, it has to look like it's even. And then it was a total like...
Where did all these Unsullied come from?
Like the Golden Company in the books, they talk about the Golden Company. They're a big deal.
I was pissed with the fucking elephants, God damn it. I was fucking mad.
See, that's another thing about the showrunners don't like animals. Like they didn't treat the dragons very well. They totally shat on the direwolf.
Where are
and then
the giant ice spiders that were as big as houses?
Oh yeah, ice spiders.
Like, I wanted the ice spiders. I mean, we got a woolly mammoth, and we got a walker polar bear. So I guess that was pretty cool.
But I guess your thoughts on that? I mean, the episode, I do, because you mentioned the whole Cersei death. Like, I didn't really think much about it, but you have, here, let me put the video version. You have thoughts, so please.
Thoughts. I've been kind of watching earlier seasons as I work on like a 24/7 channel. And there's a lot of small harkbacks that people aren't realizing. Like, you know, Robert Baratheon saying only a fool would meet the Dothraki in an open field. And they were met in an open field by the walkers and exterminated. So there was this harkback. And Cersei is constantly reminding people.
The 3 guys who ran away at the end turned into like 50,000.
Yeah, it was like, why was Ghost with Jorah? Like,
yeah, that was random, and then
that
like
was really random.
And then like Ghost had like an ear missing, but then like in one scene he didn't. Like they didn't.
Who really chewed his ear off? Like
they weren't very consistent on the CGI.
I don't even know who chewed. I mean, fucking Jaime's hand grew back for fuck's sake. The fucking Starbucks cup shows up. Jaime grew.
And I love it that they said they didn't have the CGI budget for like a pet from Jon, but. You told me about there being like 4 endings, and I know they all. Yeah, I mean, they spent a lot of money on CGI.
Jon couldn't pet the fucking direwolf. Get the fuck with the one fucking year. Fuck everybody. But
yeah, and Tormund take him. And trust me, the spinoff I want, the Tormund Ghost spinoff. Please make that happen.
I want fucking Tormund and Pod. I want Tormund and Pod because
they could start a band. It'd be awesome.
They could start a fucking band together and like giant slay and shit like that. And I want to see Bronn take Highgarden. And Sam's family, technically, Sam's castle falls under Highgarden. So I want to see this adventure of Bronn being in charge of Sam and his family and their vassals and see how the fuck this shit plays out. Like, I think this would be fabulous. But Cersei is constantly mentioning, you know, have you ever heard the song The Rains of Castamere? Have you ever heard about what my father did? Have you, do you know what we're about? If for those of you who don't know, you will now because we drink and know things. And you are now drinking and knowing things with us. Way back when the Rains and the Tarbacks still existed in the Westerlands, and Tywin's father was alive, he was, marrying his sons off and shit like that. And he married one of his sons off to a Rain, or like the father married a Rain woman or some shit. And she totally took control of the Rock and was like having her family in there. And like they said, they made it rain at the Rock for years. And Tywin's father had lent out all this money and was just kind of like being real fucking soft ass about people paying it back. And he wasn't ruling very well. So Tywin, I believe, may have come back from the War of the Nine Penny Kings, or he had come back from being the Mad King's hand and was like, we ain't running shit like this no more. But he got these families to pay their debts, except for the Rains and Tarbacks, who rose in rebellion against him. He defeated the Tarbacks in some very fucking way that nobody can remember. But the Rains decided to siege up in their mines under their castle, and Tywin diverted a river and drowned them in their mines. He drowned 300 members of a family in their mines under a castle, killed the whole fucking family, and now like the bodies are still like there just floating. So you have Cersei and Jaime in this underground kind of, in this underground mine, in this underground fucking tomb. They have, they have it sealed off. They're trapped underground, and they're now buried underground to never be recovered. And Tywin was always about the future of House Lannister and how it falls to Cersei and Jaime, and just like he wiped out the future of House Rain, his perceived future of House Lannister was kind of wiped out the same way. So this went beyond what we all thought Cersei deserved. And it was also the fact of Cersei was always preaching that she was going to go out fucking like a fucking pro. Look at everyone. They hate me. They're coming for me. The biggest thing for her to let go of was her power and her strength. And, no matter what, we watched her choke back tears this entire season. And, she always flipped out about, it's unfair that I was a woman. And I was just as good as any man. And I never needed a man to rely on. When in the end, she died broken and afraid and crying and powerless and relying on a man to save her. This was the worst fucking way for her to die. But that's why it was satisfying. So it was kind of this hark back between Tywin's legacy and Cersei's worst fear for House Lannister. And now at the end of it, the one thing both Tywin and Cersei didn't want was the future of House Lannister to be left to Tyrion is what it is. So it's this very full circle of the shit that you do does come back to you. And it could be generational and it could be right away. But it came back. It came back on Tywin. It came back on Cersei. Jaime, I think, was just an unfortunate victim in their fates. And I think he always knew that. I think Jaime's always understood that he's been an unfortunate victim in the fate of Tywin and Cersei. And I think he just knew that was kind of his lot in life.
What did you like the kind of character path he took? Because people were shipping him and Brienne big time, and then in one episode he got to have sex with her. And
yeah, but like this
the show, first time he had sex.
That's like, this is why I don't like Dick, because Dick has you out in a house coat asking a one-handed motherfucker where he was going in the middle of the night. Like, yeah. I just wish he had done her like that, because I think Brienne is far more rational than people give her credit for. And I think if he would have just kind of sat her down and said, I do love you, but this is not my fate, I think she would have tried to bargain it a bit, but it damn sure wouldn't have been a house coat in the middle of the fucking north in the middle of the night sneaking off. I always thought that Jaime was stronger than that. Cersei was the sneaky one. But I think in the end of him coming to terms with the fact that he knew he had to die with her, he became her. Because they are twins and they are connected and they are bound. So I think that was kind of the, two ends of the stick for him. And I hated how they played his character arc, but I can see how it was coming.
True. Yeah.
And for the people that are bitching, I can't believe Daenerys would burn this. Have we been watching the same fucking show for 10 years? Have we?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about that because, like, early in the episode, she's talking about mercy. And then when the bells ring and there's a chance for mercy, that's when, like, they don't even really show her, like, her expression that much. But it's like, okay.
No, but there's
I'm going in.
And there's history to this too. And it's, her dad was like this. Her dad was like this. And what a lot of people tend to forget was that Tyrion's father was the Mad King's hand. It was his best friend, and then became his hand. And for many, many years, what drove them apart was, as the Mad King grew madder, people were saying that it was actually Tywin running the country, and that drove a wedge kind of between the two of them. And that at the end is what forced Tywin to quit and, go back to the Rock. But I think it started becoming really apparent that it was Tyrion who was calling the shots at this point. And she wasn't cool with that. And it was kind of this play back to that. And when she was out of the Lannister kind of reasoning, she did the very same thing her dad did and burned the city and wanted to burn, except she could do it because there wasn't a Jaime to stab her in the back. And she did. And she did. And it's like, she's been saying this shit since season 2. She wasn't aware of her power in season 1, so we didn't really see a lot of it. But I mean, season 2, she goes to Karth, and she's like, you won't let me in, I'm literally going to burn the city to the ground when my dragons get bigger. Like, she outright fucking says it. They go to, I can't remember what the name of the town was now, but when she got the Unsullied, she burned the city to the ground when she was done.
She burned the guy when she was gonna trade for a dragon, and then
and then she gets the Unsullied out.
That might have been the first Dracarys.
She gets Missandei out. She gets the Unsullied out, and then she burns the city to the ground. She actively burned the fucking city to the ground. And she's always talking about fire and blood, fire and blood, fire and blood. There have been numerous occasions where she wanted to burn cities to the ground and her advisors told her no. And then during the siege of Marine, her and Tyrion had a conversation. She's like, no, we're going to burn the cities to the ground. And he told her why Jaime killed her father. And she goes, this is entirely different. And he said, we're talking about burning cities to the ground. This is not entirely different. She told Jon 10 minutes before she started burning the city to the ground, then fear it is. Because she can never command love like he does. So what was the easiest way to instill fear? If you don't fucking batter me, I'm just going to burn shit to the ground. Like, why is everybody so shocked that she did this? I would have been shocked if Jon got on the dragon and was like burning shit to the ground. That would have been like, what?
They didn't give him a chance, though. Poor Rhaegal. The way Rhaegal went down was
rough. He's my favorite character.
I mean, the thing is, like, big crossbow kills Rhaegal with 3 deadhead shots, and then, like, they have thousands of them, and they do nothing in this episode.
Well, she burned them. She just...
She burned them, but, like, they were, like, yeah, it was like, oh, if I go dead straight head, they can hit me. If I come from...
If
and that was Harrenhal, I think, was
angle, no, I'm totally invincible.
I love it. Your cat's behind you, like, hey, what about me? I'm the star of the show. And Sir Pounce didn't get the proper send-off he deserved.
Here's the question. Alaria Sand must be downstairs, like, what the fuck is going on?
She alive or dead? Yeah.
She's like, and what about Septa Unella, that the mountain was kind of working? Right. Like, what happened to her?
You wonder if they'll get... We might as well, I mean, get to the last... I mean, the last episode's happening. The last episode's happening, so the question is, so they made a big deal about how George R.R. Martin did the initial, like, outline for the books, and he talked about the 5 major characters, and I think it was Bran and Jon,
Arya.
Tyrion was in there, and Dany.
And I think
Sam, and they all lived to the end.
For the 5, yeah. Those are the
will 5. Those, like, Tyrion, it seems like Tyrion has set himself up to get roasted. But there's so much Dinklage love. Will he make it? Will the Lannister family survive? So many families have, like, famously been totally demolished from this show. Will there be one more?
If you look at the major houses, they're largely intact. They're largely intact. We have Sansa ruling the North in the name of House Stark. We have her, doing that. Nobody's talking about the weird kid at the Vale of Arryn.
The Vale just sitting out all this has done well.
Well, the Vale was pretty much decimated during the Knights of the Vale were pretty wiped out during the Long Night battle, and they did march to King's Landing for this battle. So he's just kind of given Sansa control over his armies at this point. But he's just kind of chilling with his moon door and just waiting for the bad men to fly, and like nobody's really talking about him.
Going on for Sansa, though.
Yeah, but I think that's pretty much what he's about. The Greyjoys, we still have Yara.
Yara didn't show up.
Yeah, Yara's like, fuck this crazy bitch. I'm done. Like, I ain't doing this shit. So we still have the North.
Bronn again. Like, there are a lot of characters. I'm like, will we see Pod at, like, all the Northern? Like, they have to at least. Are they going to pull a Harry Potter and do, like, a 20 years later deal at the end?
I hope so. But, like,
so everybody gets, like, kind of a
the Riverlands. Edmure Tully's still alive, so we still have that ring. Yeah. I mean, Arya probably was like, "Fuck you, you're a pussy," and left him in a cell somewhere because she just doesn't want to deal with her cousin right now. The Western Lands was House Lannister. Tyrion's still alive. The Reach was House Tyrell, and that's Sam's still alive. His family kind of is cool down there. His mom is still alive. Sam's mom is still alive with his sister. So his family's not wiped out. Bronn's probably taking that. They said that there was a new reigning Prince of Dorne. So the major houses
unnamed.
Unnamed, because they're like, what?
Unnamed, and apparently they hired an actor, so maybe.
Yeah, but they're like, we fucked this up.
Cutting room floors.
We fucked this up so bad with the Sand Snakes that we're just not going to fucking touch this shit anymore. But the major houses are still intact. So I think Tyrion's going to make it out because we need the major house. We need the Lannister aspect. I think because nobody's talked about who would get the Western Lands. I mean, who would get the
Dany did say, like, he screws up one more time, but maybe she needs
But even
because
still,
losing Jorah,
even
losing
still,
Missandre, all she has left is Grey Worm, and Grey Worm like had a mind meld with her. Like they both like went psycho at the same time.
this is what everyone's like. How the fuck why did Grey Worm turn? And I'm like, you have to understand that the only
He
thing.
followed
No,
her.
but the only thing that ever made Grey Worm human was Missandei.
Hmm.
That was the only thing that ever made him human. Everything else he was still very much an unsullied about, and he was still very much a soldier and very much a uniform, and very much kind of one track. But now that he's lost her, he has nothing to be human for. So why be? He literally lost everything that made him human. So it's really no surprise that he's just kind of going in as this mindless soldier at this point, because he literally has nothing left to be human for. But everyone's so I was shocked that Varys died. I loved Varys. I have a whole theory about Varys that can only be applied to the books. And if this shit,
I feel like Varys and Littlefinger were set up to be they were behind the scenes and they were going to rule, and then Littlefinger got kind of dumb on the show, and Varys just disappeared, and then Tyrion was like the smartest character, and then he got kind of dumb. But it was almost like the way the show set it up that like Dany had to lose dragons so it would look even, and then she crushed them anyway, so it didn't really matter.
Well, it's also the kind of theme is here that these men that are surrounded by Dany, they've always been historically brought down by the women they love. Always. And that's the doom of Lannister men is.
It's true. All the stories about the character who finds love.
Yeah, it's
like
kind
Robert
of, and that's
loved
Lyanna, and
that didn't work, and then Lyanna and Rhaegar over there.
I mean, let's look at the history of Lannister men. Let's look at Tytos and what happened with the Rains and that wife, and Tywin. Tywin was a very kind of nice man when he was with Joanna, and he smiled and he loved life and he loved everything, and then she died, and he became this very methodical for the legacy after her. Jaime's ultimate downfall was Cersei, and Tyrion would get himself into these compromising situations for the women he loved, and I wholeheartedly feel that he was in love with Dany. I really do. I really think that he was in love with Dany. I think he was in love with her.
And then it was like a thing, and then when like Jon and her had sex, he was like kind of watching in the hall.
Like, Jon makes bad decisions about the women he loves too. Like Jon always winds up.
Jon does poorly in battle and always survives, and then doesn't do well. You know nothing, Johnson. This whole episode, you could have said you know nothing.
Oh my god, he just stood there. I'm like, could you like go do something? But I find it very interesting how Jon is no longer becoming the focal point.
Well, so in the final episode,
that's most poignant.
What do you think happens? Is Dany like guaranteed done this episode?
I think so.
And how is it happening? She's got the military power down. Is it like I feel like there's this thing where like Drogon is going to burn Jon, but he can't?
No, Jon's not fireproof. I think.
Well, I mean, he wouldn't. If he did, he would die.
Drogon's just a means to an end. I don't think he's going to play any kind of.
Like somehow Dany dies and Jon goes north, and then they make a Bran like the king because he can't be the king.
I think Arya is going to go after her.
That seems like that's where we're at. Yeah,
I think it's going to be Arya.
It's like the only person who could.
I think Jon, because that's Jon's baby, and she's the only person that's never betrayed him.
Now, is she pregnant though? Because they haven't really. In the book, they make a big deal about the womb is quickening, but on the show, it's like they haven't really.
I don't think they're even going to play into this.
Can pregnant? I mean, would that be like a super dark thing, like Cersei and Dany? Like, hey, they set it up on the show where two women are battling each other and they're both pregnant and they both get killed. That's kind of dark.
I don't think they're going to do this Disney character bullshit. I think Arya.
Some kitty battles going on. I think the kitties are reenacting the final episode.
Yeah. I mean, they're roommates, actually. They're roommates. They're brother and sister.
I'm Drogon. No, I'm Drogon. Yeah,
and he's actually orangish gold and she's black, which is fucking hilarious. So they're like actual like Viserion and Drogon. It's fabulous. But I think Arya's going to go after her. And I think she's going to catch Arya out. And Arya, even in the books, has been consistently the only one that's ever really loved John and has never really betrayed him and has always kind of accepted John for who he is. And she's been one of the very few people in him that ever really stuck to being family for him. And especially now that he's going through this whole battle of kind of shedding who he is as a Stark and trying to embrace
And there's
this
another cat.
Targaryen thing. Yeah, there's 3 littermates. There are 3 littermates.
Yeah.
And there they are. But and please excuse my messy bed. I just didn't get a chance to make it. But I think she's gonna catch Arya up, and that's gonna be the push for Jon, and he's gonna kill her because of Arya, because that's his baby. Arya's his baby, and that's, like I said, the only person that's ever accepted him. And Jon's entire story arc has always been about the acceptance of himself and the acceptance of how others see him and who does accept him. And Arya was kind of the only one that ever really did that. So I think she's gonna go after Dany, and she's gonna get caught. She's gonna get caught up. And that's what's gonna push Jon over the edge to kill her. And I think Davos is gonna kind of just sit back and let it happen.
Now,
Because he's gonna understand that this is, as much as he doesn't like it, it's the greater good that has to be done.
Now, in the end, will there be no Iron Throne, or will someone actually sit on there?
I think Jon's gonna do exactly what Jon does. I think he's going to take the throne out of obligation, just like he did with the Night's Watch, just like he did with being king in the North. And it kind of calls back to a lot of the history between him and Maester Aemon. To where Maester Aemon would say, a Targaryen alone in this world is, the worst thing. And that's what Jon would be. Jon would be an absolutely alone Targaryen in the world. And he would keep telling him, you won't find much, you'll find honor, but you won't find much joy in your rule. I think these were all foreshadowing to Jon's ultimate rule. And I think that's the bittersweet ending that, Martin and everyone was always talking about, was that, everybody wants to see Jon on the throne. Everybody wants to see Jon rule the 7 kingdoms. But he's not going to be happy about it. And in the end, we're going to almost feel bad that we're celebrating his misery. That we wanted him on the throne, but he's so sad and this so isn't what he wants that we feel bad about it. And I think that's going to be the bittersweet aspect to it. Because, the Night's Watch was in fucking ruins when he took a hold of it. The North was in fucking ruins after the Boltons when he took hold of it. This is, what he does. He gets hold of things and he makes them better.
But I was wondering if the Iron Throne was going to make it, because the whole thing was like a dragon created the Iron Throne, and would a dragon come in and just melt it down, and then there would be no Iron Throne?
No, but I think Jon is the last living dragon. I do. I think Jon's the last living dragon. I think that kind of ties into, now that we don't need the Wall and the White Walkers aren't a threat, we don't need magic anymore. And dragons are magic, and the Targaryens are magic, and we don't need it. So I think Jon being the last living dragon is kind of the ultimate, and the last resurrected person of the Lord of Light and the last dragon. I think with him lies the ultimate death in magic, is what it is. I think he's kind of the usher into this kind of brand new world that none of us really want, but we're happy that it's kind of happening and it's not the same that it used to be. And it's all very symbolic, and it all kind of falls on Jon, which is really sad. And then that's the bittersweet part of it, is that, like I said, we all wanted to see Jon on the throne. We're all fucking championing for Jon, and we all love Jon. But we wanted it to be happy. We wanted him to want the throne. We wanted Jon to not feel like a bastard. We wanted Jon to not feel so obligated and stressed out. We wanted Jon to find happiness, and he never ultimately does, is the problem.
So around 9:20 on Sunday night Central Time, how are you going to be feeling once this show is over? And what are you going to do on Sunday from now on?
Work. I actually I haven't worked. I usually used to work Sunday nights, and then for the last 6 weeks I haven't, so that I can watch Game of Thrones. So I'm gonna go back to working Sunday nights. I'll just be working from 8 to midnight Sunday nights. I mean, like I said, I've been a long-standing follower of the series for 15 years, so it's kind of nice to have somewhat of a resolution for me. But I know it's not the same story that's gonna be told, so I'm actually, still looking forward to the books, and I kind of consider the book the actual end for me. Like that's the end. And that's when I will kind of, mourn the loss of it. And there's nothing else to study, there's nothing else to prophesize, there's nothing else to theorize, is when the books are over for me.
Well, do you think because clearly the shows going on affected George, and he wrote episodes until like I think season 4, and I think the last episode he wrote actually had the kind of foreshadowing what happened in the last episode. But do you think this will kind of kick him into gear to at least finish the next book? Maybe not all of them.
It would surprise me if he was actually waiting for the show to be done before he does finish and releases the books, because he doesn't want the influence of the show kind of weighing in on him as it's happening. And he doesn't want to hear from the fans that, well, I just read this and now the show wasn't like this. I think he got really fucking sick and tired of that shit. And he's put out a couple of statements to where the show was its own entity and that's not my work. And I think he got really tired of it being compared to the show. So I think he's waiting for the show to end so that he could be like, okay, they've told their story, now I can continue telling mine. And he said it numerous times, like, even Jon's death is wholly different in the books. Wholly different in the books. This was a very public thing when Jon died in the books. Very public. This happened in front of all the wildlings, all of Stannis' men, all of the fucking Night's Watch. This was extremely public. So the whole fallout that happened, we're not going to have this hold Jon up in a room and, have hours later when they discover that they took the body from the courtyard. No, this is going to be a very public thing. So even that's different. There's, Jon's name in the books is going to be different. Jon's not going to be Aegon in the books because we already have Aegon in the books.
Yeah, the whole Griff thing.
Yeah, the whole young Griff thing. So and they never really mentioned Rhaegar's kids' names in the show. So it was very easy to kind of blend Jon's character with the young Griff character and, kind of flow with that. But the names are heavily mentioned in the books. I think Jon's actual name is Jaehaerys. And the first King Jaehaerys was a huge proponent of the Night's Watch. He was a huge supporter of them. He would visit the North often, and like his wife, him and his wife were awesome. And she would kind of fly up to, go see the Night's Watch on her dragon, and she's the one that gave the land of the gift to the Night's Watch so that they can farm on it. And the greatest thing about Jaehaerys and his wife was they used to have these knockdown drag out fights. And she would leave him for like a year. She would like go back to like Dragonstone and shit, and she's like, I'm whole ass not dealing with you right now. Like they would be actively separated, and the kids would be like, Mom, can you come home? Like, Dad really loves you, and he didn't mean to be a dick. And he's like super sorry. So can you like get back with him because we can't deal with him anymore. Like Dad's a fucking mopey piece of shit. Please come home. And they had this wonderful dynamic, and I think they're gonna the dynamic. Jon is now currently dating Mance Rayder's sister-in-law in the books. And it's very much the same dynamic with him and Val that Jaehaerys and his wife had. And it's wonderful to see this really flesh out and play out and actually see them being human and not just kings and not just members of the Night's Watch and not just wildlings, but people. It's really.
I forgot, like Mance Rayder's still alive.
Yeah, Mance Rayder's like
in the books. They're like
fucking like spying on the Boltons and shit.
Hey, dude, yeah, start cranking these books out now.
But I think he's gonna wait until the show's over, until he really starts like getting into gear with it. I would fucking laugh if the show ends and then they're like, Winds of Winter is being released in 3 weeks. I would fucking laugh my ass off. I'd be like, this motherfucker was just.
He's pushed back against the whole, you finished the books, but the next book, I mean, I know some chapters have been released, so he's definitely closer.
Yeah, and there's some really super fucking points of view from them. There are some really excellent.
I mean, he directed.
There's some really excellent points of 9, and I'm not going to ruin it for everyone, but if they're available online if you want to read them. But he does some really good non-regular character points of view in The Winds of Winter. And it's fleshing out to be a really good book to where you're seeing more of what went on behind the scenes of like shit like the Red Wedding and the Mutiny of the Night's Watch. And Dany in the books is where we left off. Dany was still a Marine, but her brother is the one who landed on Dragonstone. And they had offered her to marry her brother and she turned it down. This young Griff Fagon character. Which leads me into the theory that I think Varys is a woman and young Griff is actually her son and she's a Blackfyre Targaryen bastard. And Varys's whole kind of drive was to always put a bastard Targaryen on the throne, which would kind of fall in line to why Varys aligned with Jon in the show. They kind of blended the young Griff Jon Snow character in the show. But I think that's
Varys pulled off the Tyrion or the move with the crossbow with Pycelle.
Right. And what I actually know, there was one thing that I think the show did better than the books. And Cersei in the books blew up the Hand of the King, the Hand's Tower. She blew up the entire fucking sept in the goddamn in the show. And that was one of my favorite montages I think I'd ever seen. The music.
That was the overall one of the best.
Like when I'm getting hyped to go do shit, I actually play Light of the Seven, and I'm like, "Yep, now I'm gonna go fucking burn to the ground. Here we go, bye."
Well, gosh, I mean, when it comes to Game of Thrones, I feel like the length of the show, they could have doubled it and probably been just fine. And with this show, I think with your knowledge of Game of Thrones, we could have gone on longer, except run out of booze or if we have more.
I would have loved if they had not done the typical HBO hour-long series fare. And they had actually taken a different direction and kind of made this like theatrical multi-season release. And I understand, budget and shit like that, but I think that would have been something really groundbreaking to do. Is to I think from season 1 they should have done this like theatrical series of it. I made them, theatrical length. They made them 80 to 90 minute episodes and kind of we did get, because there was some really beautiful moments from the books. That are just, it's good life advice and it's really poignant shit. And there's been a few quotes from that book that kind of like changed my life around. And I have like certain points from the book where there was shit that I was going through in my life at that point. The Broken Man speech. When I had read that, my ex-husband had been deployed to Afghanistan, and it goes on about how men never come back whole from war. And they don't know exactly what they're fighting for, but once they do get this thrill of war and the thrill of hunting and killing other men, there's just nothing that kind of compares to it. And then going through that, at the same time of reading this and how it does break men and how it does kind of dehumanize them, I lost my mind. I started hysterical crying and then had to put the book down for days. Like I couldn't deal with it. And then eventually went back to it. And that and Tyrion's speech to Jon about know who you are and wear it, I think were two of the most life-changing things for me. Like that, it kind of completely changed my whole outlook on life, was reading that. And I think that would have been great to truly flesh out.
Yeah, I think that's something that maybe gets lost about people getting mad about what happens with particular characters, like how much the books really meant to people and what George R. Martin did, because he was like a TV writer, and then he's like, I'm going to do something that can't be adapted.
And he did.
And then it got adapted, and you have to give HBO credit. They did a pretty good job with the show. They did pretty
good, but you can't. Even The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings wasn't as epically adapted as the books were. I mean, the books were the books, and that's exactly what Game of Thrones is. It is on par with the Lord of the Rings series, and it's people compare it to the Wheel of Time, but I think the quality and the epicness and the importance of it is way beyond the Wheel of Time series. The Wheel of Time series is just kind of similar and fucking long, like this shit is. Which, yes, I've read that too. I've read all.
Speaking of Wheel of Time, we've taken a long. I think we've gone past an hour, which is a little bit long for what I've been doing lately. So to wrap it up, is there anything Game of Thrones that you feel like you got to get out? because this is it. This is the last
Don't
chance you get to say
expect a Tumblr fan fiction fairy tale. If you have, you have not. It's like Rambly said. If you expect a happy ending, you have not been paying attention. You haven't been. This is not meant to be happy. This is not meant to be your happy little fairy tale of 3 direwolf puppies and 2 Targaryen twins and Jon and Dany. It's not going to work out this way. You are going to be sad. You are going to be disappointed. So please stop. Stop with this. I wanted everybody to be happy. Bitch, this is not a substitute for your shitty ass life. This is meant to mirror how shitty life can be. Okay. So please stop trying to vicariously live through these fake ass people and think,
yeah, get your meat and mead ready for the show because
please do. And
it's going to be emotional.
I think it's going to be pretty epic. So
exactly, and I'm excited to hear the
and buy better TVs if you can't see, if you don't understand why they did the lighting to make you feel like a lost soldier and you couldn't see shit. My TV was great. Buy a better TV. They're super fucking cheap now. They're on sale for Memorial Day. Go buy a better TV. You can get them for like $500 off on fucking Best Buy right now.
It's very possible that my next episode will be a post Game of Thrones reaction with many of the same topics covered with probably not as much depth because it's going to be tough to top what Jen did tonight. So Jen,
thank you.
Let people know where people can find you, your show, your semi-mythical Canadian co-host, and any potential upcoming merging with Atheist Community of Austin if that's happening.
Yeah, I've kind of been super interested in the work that the Atheist Community of Austin has been doing lately. Despite the controversy surrounding it, I still wholeheartedly support the ACA, although I may not agree with a lot of the statements that have been made through the ACA. I do stand behind many of its members and the core values and what they're trying to do for the community. So I did kind of want to get that out there, and I do want to champion for them. I am at Not Another Atheist Podcast. You can find us on Stitcher and iTunes and notanother.atheistpodcast.com and Podbean and kind of all, the regular usual haunts. I do have a co-host, although everyone thinks that I'm lying and have CGI'd him because they've never met him. So my co-host is like Drogon. Everybody thinks I've CGI'd him. But yeah, that's where you can find us. The ACA, like I said, I promised that I would say something at some point in time, and I will say that I appreciate the press release that was released by Jamie, retracting, jumping on somebody's back and demonizing them, but I think it's a lot more muddled than that. But I do support the ACA. I support the decision of the board of directors, and I still think that they are a fantastic organization for what they are trying to do and the community that they have built. So
yeah, it's one thing I've definitely stayed consistent throughout the whole history of doing the show and realizing this is a community is we need community, and you know what? Bad things are going to happen, and people are going to make
right, and not everybody's going to agree on how things are handled or
statements. Yeah,
but, please remember that at one point, a lot of us were religious, and we held views that were detrimental to other people and did hurt other people. And when you did kind of cross over into atheism and wanted your voice to be heard, you wanted people to educate you and you wanted the time to educate yourself. So let's not forget that lesson. And let's, when people do need to be educated and were wholly misinformed and they tell you that I'm going to educate myself, please let's give them the time to do that. And let's give them the same courtesy and respect that was extended to you at one point. Let's not forget kind of where we all come from. Not everybody's a saint, not everybody's a villain. And if somebody says that they are going to try to educate themselves, please let's at least give them a moment to do that and not demand them be the three-eyed raven and touch a fucking tree and instantly know it and instantly change their positions. And remember that at some point in time, you may have held beliefs that were hurtful and wrong to other people and have since changed your mind after being exposed to these people and after being taught by these people that it was wrong and why your microaggressions and why your views are wrong. So let's keep that in mind before we instantly jump on some people who have never given a wholehearted reason to label them Granted, when we have people like Ben Shapiro who are actual pieces of shit, then yeah, let's jump on them. But when somebody comes to you and has been proven themselves an ally and are misinformed and uneducated, let's try to make a first ditch effort to educate somebody before we turn around and label them something that they're not. Just like you wanted the respect to be done as well when you first came into this community.
And you mentioned how George R.R. Martin and his books were very important to you and a key part of your life. The Atheist Experience show was a very important show. Like, that kind of got me on the path to where I am now. Some may say for better or worse, but it definitely was a key moment for me.
And Talk Heathen also had him on, and while Jamie and Eric are not Matt Dillahunty, they are, and you guys really don't see behind the scenes a lot of what Jamie and Eric do to try to keep this community going, and the nights that they've given up, the livelihoods that they have given up to do it. And they're also allies, and they didn't mean to come across as if they weren't, but they wholly stand behind their statements. And like I said, we've all, especially coming from religion, some of us have held views that were wronged against other people, and when we were educated, we did change our views, but we just wanted the time to be educated and form our own views from it. And I think that's the lesson that was kind of missed here, was just while Stephen was, I don't support the language that he used in his original video. I don't support the views that he had in his original video. He did say he was going to take the time to educate himself, and we really should have given him that fair shot of letting him sit down with the facts. And if he would have turned around and said no and still used, language that was offensive or outdated information that was offensive, then yeah, we could have been like, fuck you, you're a piece of shit. But remember where you were at one point and the respect that you wanted and the lessons that you wanted to learn before you start not giving people the same chance to do the same thing.
Well said. Hard to top that. So I think with that, we'll call it a night. Thank you, Jen, and it's been great.
Me too.